Phil.
Hello.
Welcome back. We're finishing up our discussion or talk around teams and the roles that you need to have in place inside an agile team. So we'll probably be talking most of the time about software product teams. That's most of our work.
And you're looking at me already because I think actually, while most of our background is software, this probably applies to any agile team.
Yeah. So we'll try and avoid talking about skills because that will be very product and context specific, but the roles should be generic enough to be interesting to any team.
Yeah. And this is not what you do when the team is up and running. It's okay, you're building a team. What kind of roles do you need?
Mm-hmm. Okay. And the specific roles that we have, you'll have the team that do the work, the implementation team, the delivery team, and there are these roles: Scrum Master and Product Owner.
Well, if you're doing Scrum, do you know what? I've always had I've alluded to this at the start. I've always had a bit of a problem with the title Scrum Master. And I remember when I was first the Scrum Master, I went home, I was really pleased with my new job, and I told my mum, I'm a Scrum Master now.
And
She's
your mum
like,
went, what?
You what? And it's one of those things that if you've been in the industry a while, it makes sense. But
there's very few people in IT who can go home and tell their mum what they do and give them their job title without a blank face at the moment.
Well, interestingly, I once offered to countersign a passport application for a friend who identified me as a professional, and my job title at that time was Scrum Master. So
friend didn't know you very well.
I'll see how that goes. And so I put Scrum Master back, and the passport office very politely sent the form back to me and say, no, you have to have a job. And I think I changed it to project manager, and they accepted that. But agile coach and many of the other titles that we...
So we digress from Phil's hate of Scrum Master.
Software delivery manager.
Scrum Master term.
I don't hate Scrum Masters, but...
No, not Scrum Masters. I'm sure you'd like lots of people who are Scrum Masters, but you don't like the term.
No.
Okay,
well,
and that's fair enough.
But it's very specific to Scrum. But what we're looking for here is...
And the word master can be misinterpreted and has unfortunate connotations that I suspect we want to move away from as well. So.
Yeah. What we're looking for what really is a servant leader, isn't it?
Absolutely. So there is some...
So would a female Scrum Master be a Scrum Mistress?
I think the implication is mastery.
Right, okay.
Competence.
Mastery.
Let's go with with expertise in process.
Okay.
Yeah, but what we're really asking for is a servant leader. So the title doesn't really matter that much, but it's...
And that's the thing, does it have to be a specific role?
Ooh.
Oh.
Well, so back to this campaign idea of leadership at every level. So there will be technical leadership that should not come from the Scrum Master or process leader.
You can't expect one person to lead everything in a team. And then... So I kind of like hark back to XP because I think a lot of Scrum teams I see borrow a lot from XP because Scrum has nothing in it. It has very little in it, right?
10 or 15 years ago, we used to talk about Scrum and XP or Scrum with XP because XP brought the technical practices. Yeah.
Scrum is deliberately lightweight, right? It is the better word I would use rather than having nothing in it. It's deliberately lightweight, and if you're a dev team, you're not going to get running unless you borrow heavily from XP. Now, back in XP, I'm pretty sure my XP knowledge might be a bit rusty, but their idea of the person who helps the team with the XP methods is somebody on the team who's just doing another job who's done XP before, right? Not a specific role in its own right.
Mm.
So do you need that specific role who is doing what a Scrum Master is supposed to be? Is that one person just doing the Scrum Master things? So, I mean, let's walk through the Scrum Master things that they're doing.
Well, yeah, that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
What do they need to do?
Before we say, do we need the role, we have to talk about what sort of things do we expect them to do. So
we need we need somebody in the team to do these things that we're going to talk about.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we have our delivery team, we have our product owner, and we have our Scrum Master,
Master.
who we don't like what we call them, and do we like what they do?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what do we expect a great Scrum Master to be doing?
Yeah, well, so there's a kind of agile coach responsibility there. So being able to distinguish between an agile coach and a Scrum Master, I think it's very blurred lines. So, if you take the X-wing model of agile coaching, there's a certain amount of mentoring and teaching, and as well as a bit of coaching at the early part of a team's journey when nobody knows nothing. It's largely a teaching and mentoring role. And then there's obviously some ability and knowledge of practice that's there. And different coaches have different specialities. And Scrum Masters will as well, yeah? So, many Scrum Masters I know have come from a development background, very development focused. Some have come from a product background and are product focused. And there's all sorts of different flavours of Scrum Master out there.
Yeah.
So one of the things, several of the things are this teaching, mentoring, coaching aspect, especially getting new teams, it's essential, right? For a new team who doesn't know nothing, you've got to have somebody who knows about the process in there to help everybody get up to speed, and it's like a massive full-time job. But there are other activities those Scrum Masters do. So
yeah, well, it's the basic stuff.
Yeah.
Jumping really quickly,
Yeah.
which is actually the Scrum Master might not know the best process, but they need to be able to guide the team through the right conversations. Don't they?
That's a really good point. Actually, it's like they might not know especially if they're new into an organisation, they might not know what's going to work best within that organisational context, and they're helping the team to come up with the best practices that work for them. Yeah?
And they will recognise some things that they need to have in place, but and they will recognise what they need to aim for.
Yeah.
And the team might not recognise how important it is to think about those things, and so that's that element of process leadership.
There is, and I guess it depends whether you want your Scrum Master going down an evolutionary or revolutionary path, right? So there is that whole thing with Scrum in that if you introduce that into an organisation, it's a bit of a revolutionary approach. You're literally changing a hell of a lot of stuff. Whereas you go down the Kanban route, you're kind of meeting the organisation where it is and, modelling the current process, then trying to shift that in a direction that's more agile, right? Yeah. And so I guess, you could have a Scrum Master come in and they could just say, right, tomorrow, the start of the revolution, follow me. So not necessarily having to know a lot about the organisation, not necessarily having getting the team to sort of guide the process.
So there is that element of coaching and driving improvement. But I do think there's a lot of the basics as well that perhaps we should talk about. So just making sure the right meetings happen at the right time with the right agendas and happen well.
Yep. And especially important in Scrum, which has distinct meetings associated with, but a lot of frameworks do, don't they? So if you're a safe Scrum Master, you'd be setting up all those safety scrummy meetings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So someone has to be the person who physically books the retrospective, hosts it, makes sure it happens, and happens well. Yeah.
So this is the point where somebody goes, well, I could just get a PA to do that. So are you just like setting up some meetings, making sure some people turn up?
Well, it was really interesting. You thought PA, I thought project manager.
Right.
I thought project manager because you said meetings and agendas, and then the first meeting you spoke about, I'm not saying retrospectives, which is about the continuous improvement, which is about the type of process that the Scrum Master, that agile leadership role, is going to bring in.
Well, it is a genuine problem that a lot of organisations see the Scrum Master as the PA, so they'll have another leader, a project manager in place, and the Scrum Master will be there.
You're like the Jira monkey.
Just to be the Jira monkey and meeting booker.
Yeah. And
it's a part of the role, but it's not all of it.
No, and actually, you want to share some of that stuff out amongst the team as well, especially the Jira monkeying. If the team's not updating their own tools and boards and information, then you've got a problem there, right? So, what are they doing above the sort of like mechanics of meetings, making sure everybody turns up, making sure the meeting follows the right format. So I think a big part, unblocking blockers.
Yes.
Now, that's a massive part of doing that job. And it's not, and I think this is why you need somebody with a little bit more gravitas, because some of those blockers...
Let's talk a little bit more about what you mean by that. So sweeping away impediments, that's another phrase that we hear, isn't it? So what are we talking about? What's a blocker, and how does the Scrum Master take a role in?
So a blocker, say we've got 5 stories in our sprint. One of those stories we can't progress because we can't get the environments in order to release the value and put it on a staging environment, for example, so that everybody can look at it and validate it, right? That's a blocker. It's anything that stops you progressing that work from right to left. And I think the reason why a Scrum Master has to have a bit of gravitas is because a lot of those problems are not just simple team level problems, they are organisational level problems that you need somebody who can go in there and fight the good fight at sometimes the senior level.
So it's outside of our team. There's nothing within the remit of our team that we can change.
No. When it's in the team, that's a different thing. And I think the Scrum Master facilitates that conversation.
Yes.
And helps the team solve their own problems. But in my experience, most of the intractable problems are not within the team.
So there's 2 roles. First of all, there is to help the team recognise their responsibility to step up and collaborate within among themselves.
Yep.
And that organisational, okay, this is genuinely outside. And if the organisation wants us to succeed, the organisation will have to support us.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about how many Scrum Masters do you need
to change a light bulb?
You
Just
know,
one to coach the team doing it.
Ask the team.
Is it one for 2 teams? Is it one for a team of 10? Is it one for a team of 5?
It's maturity dependent, isn't it?
It is. So if you're in an organisation that's just riddled with dependencies and blockers and it's generally a bit of a mess, you're going to need more effort on coaching people and sweeping away those impediments.
Yeah. I think completely fresh team, 1-to-1, unless you've got agile coach support as well.
Or a messy organisation, 1-to-1.
Yep, messy organisations with a bucket load of dependencies that are just, peppering your board with blockers.
Mm-hmm. And I guess a lot of the work would be to be putting conversations in place, team of teams level retrospectives to help squash those.
Yeah, I think the team of teams level stuff, your Scrum Master represents those Scrum of Scrums. Mm-hmm. If you're working on a big program, they're the conduit into the rest of the organisation and the other teams, aren't they? Not they should be the only person, right?
But often they are the best conduit, because you don't want all your stakeholders turning up and tapping your developers on the shoulder. And I've worked in organisations like that, and the Scrum Master then can protect the team from all those distractions.
Yeah, and it is protecting but not isolating, because I think that's good Scrum Masters protect the teams from noise, but foster the relationships of their team members with other team members to kind of massage inter-team dependencies through the life cycle to get things done quickly.
Yes.
Okay, so we're just touching on the next role that we spoke about, where you're talking about bringing the stakeholders in, which is the product owner.
Actually, I do want to cover one more thing on Scrum Masters, which is a bit of a pet peeve, is where organisations set up more than one leader for a team. So often we see, we'll have a project manager and a Scrum Master.
Right.
And what happens when you have a team of 10 and it's got 2 leaders?
Yeah. So there's that whole thing, I guess it's what that other person's doing.
You've chopped the Scrum Master's leg off at that point, haven't you? Because you the way you describe that, they've kind of been put into a role of serving. the project manager, likely.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I've got this thing that with job titles,
Yes.
it's and I'll get onto my little pet peeve with Scrum people in a minute.
Yeah.
Is that actually if there is genuine work to do and it's useful work, then there should be somebody doing it. Now, generally, I think these situations where we've seen a Scrum Master and like an agile delivery manager
Yes.
working together with a team, it's probably not a good use of or efficient use of higher level resources, is it, in terms of management style resources?
Well, Scrum Master is a management role. I think the
Yeah.
way that we were describing this needs to
It's just
highlight
a different kind of
resolve
management, yeah.
impediments.
But there is things that I would say a Scrum Master doesn't necessarily do that there might be somebody else doing, and then not necessarily, you wouldn't have one per team, but you might have one in a collection of teams. So
I
for
don't
example,
expect
budgeting or something like that.
I don't expect line management to be a Scrum Master responsibility.
No, I don't either.
Well, it doesn't have to be, but if it is, it's not the end of the world. I've been a line manager and a Scrum Master in a joint role, and it did work. But if someone else happened to be line managing the developers, that would have been okay too.
Yeah. There's probably a whole load of Scrum people who say that's not very purist to have your line manager as your Scrum Master. But then I think there's a lot of purist Scrum people who say lots of things about what you can and can't do. Right, so
yeah,
they're very keen to point the Scrum Master can't be part of the team, can't have a other job other than Scrum Mastering. I'm thinking, well, why not?
As long as
I'm not bothered.
As long as the work's getting done,
yeah,
and they haven't split the leadership role into two, so you've got a Scrum Master with his legs cut off and can't do what he wants. I think it doesn't matter. I think you can have a little bit of flex.
No, and because we'll find this when we talk about the PO role in a minute. That, you look at threads and you see some people very dogmatic about, the PO can't be part of the team, the PO shouldn't be part of the team, the PO shouldn't turn up to retrospectives, the Scrum Master shouldn't be part of the team. It's like, who cares, right? I'm sure, and saying, well, you're not doing Scrum, you're not going to be able to be innovative and stuff like that. I'm sure Zuckerberg and co, when they were sitting around, making one of the most innovative products that's ever come out of a development team, when scratching their navels, going, "Oh, who's the Scrum Master? Should we make the Scrum Master separate to this, Facebook delivery team?"
Well, I saw the movie. There was no Scrum Master.
No, there wasn't. but actually, there was a lot of infighting. So maybe a Scrum Master might have, smoothed over the wheels.
That's what they needed.
They needed a Scrum Master.
They did.
Yeah, it would have been all right.
Or servant leader.
And this goes back to this XP idea.
Yeah.
Where in XP, the delivery team works very closely with the customer. And of course, Zuckerberg knew what he wanted. He wanted a website with information about the people he was...
He was like a PO and a leader and a developer all at the same time. This is like a priest of Scrum's nightmare.
Well, I've had this question come up at a user group, actually, from somebody coming from university that had done software development. I said, I don't understand why I need these roles. If I'm writing software, I sit and write software. I said, well, okay, but at the moment, you're probably writing software that you use, that you need.
Yeah.
And she said, yes, I am.
Yeah.
So you absolutely know what it needs to do, and you can change it a tiny bit, and you can see if it's got better or not. But imagine that you're writing it for somebody else. You're now going to have to talk to them. Now, if you can sit with each other,
that's the difference, isn't it? Anybody who's writing a product they're kind of in their head and they're just pushing it out there. You can get that one person writing the code, and you can probably have a couple of people with them, and they're all sharing that person's vision. But as soon as you go into a business context and you've got to talk to some other people in a business, then you've got to bring a team together of people who've never met each other, and then make them work efficiently.
Yes.
Then the reality is you probably need some people who are going to help with that.
It's two challenges. Number one, understanding what you're supposed to be building. When we work in this digital world of uncertainty, complexity, volatility, validating that what you're building is actually genuinely useful and feeding back what you learn, and additionally collaborating with other people with a shared vision how do you build that shared vision? So this is why we have these extra roles in, because as individuals, yes, we're talented and we can write code and we can do clever things, but to help us be aligned with a process vision and a product vision, the roles are helpful. So we talked about the Scrum Master, how at a superficial level they're defining meetings and agendas, but we're making sure that those agendas include improvement, like retrospective ideas, highlighting the team's responsibility to solve problems that they have, the remit to solve, highlighting to the organisation the impediments and blockers that are outside the team's capability to change or fix, protecting the team from noise, process leadership. The other role, which we touched on then, product owner.
Yep.
Yep.
Really important role.
What's that? What do we expect the product owner to be offering us?
A vision of what we've got to build. What's the promised land we're heading towards? So being able to synthesize the outcome that the business wants, that they are, and you know, actually, it's quite a difficult role in the fact that for most organisations I've worked in, there's never one person going, I'm deciding to build this in the product, blah, 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 we're going to build that, that, and that. I've got the whole vision, I've got the outcome. I'm the only person who can decide this. They've got to be a conduit, and they've got many, you know, they've got many masters and many different stakeholders to face off into. And it's a really difficult job because you've got to balance different needs. You've got to be, you've got to be strong enough to disappoint somebody in one area or one department, and at the expense of giving something to another area that you think is going to actually make more of a difference.
So their responsibility to a team is to be absolutely clear about what's currently important.
Yeah, that's it. To basically to funnel all of that noise in and actually get clarity from that, to be able to tell the team exactly what is the highest priority thing that they need to be building now, and then prioritize that so that they can work through with a clear set of stuff.
Yeah, and in Scrum, the artifact that is used to represent that thinking is the backlog.
The backlog.
Yeah.
And of course, the goals, the sprint goals, and product goals.
But that is a really good point. The thing is not to produce a backlog, it's to take all that noise, all those customer requests, and the backlog is just a way of expressing that in a way that can be digested and prioritised and communicated.
And
that's all it is.
And I think the other important aspect is to be able to get the team to put their own stamp on the direction and vision of the product as well. So there's that one thing where you could, some product owners / business analysts or pairings of those two, and we can talk about that in a minute, will go and they'll go out to the business. They'll get requirements from different parts of the business, and then they will be very specific about what they want a team to build, and the team has very little interaction in that decision, right? I don't think that is necessarily the most effective way, and you don't get the most engagement.
Yeah.
You get the most engagement when you kind of show them what the future looks like and what the outcomes are, and trying to get them to galvanise and creatively problem solve around that.
Yeah, some of the best product owners I've seen have brought developers alongside customers into the same room, and talk through the solutions.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, the developers have worked on many systems and things just like this before.
Yeah.
And they've got ideas that the product owner or the customer never even thought of.
Yeah.
Better ways of doing it.
Well, you've got that story of that developer who came up with the idea for the product. Remember that one?
Yes, I do. No, I do. I do.
See, I remember that. So you should tell that story, because I think that's an example of where good product owner. I think it was you at the time.
It might have been me at the time.
Yeah. So good product owner actually allows the team to come up with some of the creative solutions that achieve the business outcomes.
Well, a really, really simple one was we were designing a web form, right? It happened to be for doctors to register to work with health insurance, so that there'd be a doctor we could use and refer to. And the customer had designed a form, but they didn't realise all the automated lookups we could do. So we put them in a room with the developer, and they immediately said, well, actually, if we have this reference number, we can look up their doctor details.
Yeah.
If we have, they could just start typing in their address. We don't need to capture individual address lines like the old way of doing it. And these things hadn't even been occurred to. And if your product owner is just an order taker, they're just a waiter.
Yeah.
Well, they say that
it's not great.
If by talking about the problems that you've got instead of the solution that you want, you really open up the space for a more innovative solution. Maybe even you don't need software to solve the problem.
Yes,
maybe.
But, wouldn't that be cheap?
Yeah, and you say like the Scrum Master has that kind of ability to facilitate, better team performance. So does the product owner, and the way that they empower the team to actually come up with some solutions rather than prescriptively feeding them. So, when I was working with lots of offshore teams, they expected that spoon feeding because I think all the organisations they'd worked with, kind of being a cog in the machine of a big bank or something like that, they're just getting this requirement spec and it's very prescriptive about what they'd been doing in the past. And so, when I first started working with these offshore teams about 10 years ago, they were kind of expecting the same thing. And I wasn't going to give it to them. And actually, it made things very hard in the beginning because it's like, oh, yeah, you should be giving me a specific list of requirements and the rules and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, no, you've got to help me come up with the right solution because actually, especially when what we were doing was doing a packaged application, there are ways you can do things that are more sympathetic to the package than others. So if you've got a particular requirement, there's never just one way to solve the problem, right? And actually your development team has really got to help you shape up that story. Card conversation, confirmation.
Yes.
Always
good. 3 C's.
Yeah, and those are perhaps activities that a great Scrum Master would introduce if the product owner is not collaborating effectively with the delivery team.
I think that's a great point actually. Because everybody's at different levels of their product owner experience. Because sometimes we go right, well, we want a product owner for this team, and well, what's actually the most valuable thing? It's the domain knowledge, not necessarily the process knowledge. You can teach the process knowledge relatively quickly, I think. Ooh, controversial.
I don't know.
Well, let's park that one.
I think it's different when it comes to business analysis, right? Because with business analysis, there are a whole raft of techniques. With product ownership, if you were just to go and do the simple Scrum basics, you could teach that in next to no time. You could teach story writing in next to no time, sort of.
But you can set increasingly valuable expectations for people around what they should expect from a process, and that's where a great Scrum Master will constantly be challenging the teams, not letting them rest on their laurels. Say, okay, so Scrum, you're finished now. That we know that's not the case.
I need to answer put across the alternative view on that one.
But this is where I think actually sometimes like a PO-BA combination is quite powerful in that actually why not have someone from the business who knows what they want in a functional perspective to work with somebody who can use the tools, methods and techniques to be able to express that.
So in my ideal world, I'm actually on the same page.
Right. Okay.
I would rather take someone with the domain knowledge and train them up and put them in the team. What I've seen in the real world is a lot of the people who have that domain knowledge don't necessarily want to be the product owner, or they're not allowed to be the product owner. Because
actually we demand quite a lot of product owners, and if you're to take that to its furthest extent to getting the exact requirement, you'd want that there's quite a lot of minutiae involved in that.
And we also got to recognise that it's a hard job, right? Yes. Actually, to get the basics of it, you're right, you can get trained up quite quickly, but to do it really well, that takes some time. Yeah. And what I have seen work quite well is where you take people with those product owner skills, but without necessarily the domain knowledge, and they do a fantastic job of going out to many, many stakeholders. And collecting it back. And where we will often see this work, and you've mentioned it a bit already, is the BA. So you have someone with all those business analysis skills can step into a product owner role, even though they might not have buckets of the domain knowledge.
Yeah, and that is it's important. I don't see the problem having a pair of people who are responsible, like a PO-BA combination, well, one who's kind of more representing the business and one helping to galvanise and use the tools and techniques.
Really interesting, because in the archetypal Scrum team of implementers or delivery teams, development team, product owner, Scrum Master, there is this intersection where the technical leadership, the process leadership and the product leadership need to collaborate. Is it helpful to define a role and say, okay, and you are business analyst, you are BA, or do you expect business analysis to be a pervasive skill in that team?
I think it's horses for courses, right? It's about what work is there to do and who's doing it. So if you have a dedicated product owner to a team, so one of the patterns I see is that, there'll be a business and they think, right, okay, say they haven't got a mobile app. We're going to do a mobile app. We recognise that's a really big initiative. We are going to take someone from the business, mainly from the web team probably, and they are going to be the product manager / product owner for that. And there's a dedicated person. Maybe they're experienced in product ownership and they could just deal with that role themselves, right? But often you've got a business where you want to engage people who have got day jobs. You want them to guide the development, but they haven't got time to do all the things that a product owner needs to do.
Yes.
And so they need some support, and that's where a business analyst comes in. And, of course, there is the genuine case where there's lots of analysis to do. So, for example, you are integrating to a legacy system and you don't know how it works. You've got to get someone to go out, do a bit of analysis on how that legacy system functions. It'll be a combination of architects and analysts probably coming back and doing that.
And do you work with user experience people as well? Because that's another
absolutely.
That's another specialisation that I've seen working closely with product owners.
Yeah, because you wouldn't expect the product owner necessarily to do the whole UX of it. You'd expect them to have an influence and an interest in it. Yeah, absolutely. But not to do that role as well. So why expect them to do a process model of how something's going to work in a supply chain system?
Well, it's got to really be dependent on the team and the situation you're working in. Because I have done the product owner role with the UX, but then we weren't designing something that was customer facing. It was a back end tool, so the UX took less of a priority.
Yeah.
So actually, we could get away with I was a BA at the time, became a product owner.
Yeah.
And then did the UX as well, and that was right for that team. But I wouldn't advocate it for everywhere.
And it's all horses for courses, isn't it?
Product owner has massive influence on the ability of a team to deliver in an agile way.
Absolutely.
And I went and visited a windmill in Kent, and it became clear to me. But we sometimes work with product owners who say, "I need all of this."
Right.
And we say, "Oh, okay. And which bit do we need first?" I need it all together. It has
Right.
no value until it's all here. And then there are other product owners who might be offering a story.
I'd say that's a
here
bad
and
product owner first.
So the visit to the windmill made this clear to me. It was a working windmill, and grain gets poured in at the top. They haul up bags of grain, they tip it down the top, and at the bottom there are two big millstones that the wind spins the round and they grind. And the miller has a little lever.
Yeah.
That adjusts the flow of the grain down through the hole in the middle of the millstones.
Yep.
And if he pulls that too far back, too much grain goes through, and the millstones are pushed apart, and the grain's not ground into proper flour. It's low quality.
Yeah.
But if the grain is dropping in too slowly, the stones touch and they literally grind to a halt, which is where the phrase grind to a halt comes from.
Yeah.
And it struck me that's a brilliant metaphor
for the product owner,
for the product owner's
and how he feeds
responsibility
the
to feeding
team.
it.
Yeah, so that is good, because you've got to feed the team the right amount of stuff in
and
the
right size as well.
Yeah, and in the right order.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but and so that's that.
Not the Windy Miller would have to worry about that, but it's I like the analogy, because if you don't, and because actually a lot of the problems some teams have where they've not got strong product ownership or strong agile analysis is the work does grind to a halt, doesn't it? You basically don't have anything ready. It's like we've got a load of stories, but there's so many unanswered questions about them that the team simply can't start.
The product owner, I don't understand what this means, what does this mean? And we just realise that there's additional work that needs to be done, so those stories weren't ready. And then the case where the product owner just says, I need all of this. And there you do not expect a quality outcome.
Yeah, the cost of not having product ownership is massive. It's
a huge one, and I actually think it's the make or break between, I think it's very underrated in its influence on the success of whether something is done well or done badly. I think it's the make or break with a lot of teams I've seen. Yeah. Particularly, and of a particular skill is where you've got to transfer those requirements and those asks over a remote boundary. So, I started my agile analysis with a team that was, and I'm not going to say product ownership, I'm just because we weren't doing necessarily pure Scrum there. So I'll start my agile analysis with a team that was with me there, and that is a far different prospect from when your team is separated from you and you've got to communicate across that divide.
Yes. Well, we touched a bit on co-location, and we touched a bit, had a whole podcast on it.
Yeah.
But it's that extra level of difficulty up, isn't it? If your product owner is in a different place with a different culture.
Yeah.
To the people actually doing the work. And I've worked with some teams who had never seen or used the product they were building. So, work for large retail organisation, and a lot of the developers were in a different country that just had never been to that shop.
Yeah, and that's a good reminder there. I think because of a product owner's connections into the business, or a product manager, whoever's doing that kind of product facing role, I think they've got a responsibility to connect developers and the people of the team with the customer, so that they really understand the customers.
Yes.
It really struck me when I started working with teams on e-commerce stuff, and for me it was just so obvious what should be developed on a screen, because we were so used to using e-commerce tools and shops within this country. It's just like you think, well, everybody knows that a basket looks like that, or a checkout page looks like that, and then I'm getting these questions from team members asking me things that I think are obvious because you work, you're used to it, seeing that every day.
Yes.
And those are questions they wouldn't need to ask if they had a connection with the customer and knew what the customer's problems were and knew how the customer interacted with the software. So I think it saves a lot of time if you can connect your team with the end customer, and there's some organisations are really good at doing that.
Notwithstanding the problem that Phil described, which is you then open up these channels for lots of conflicting requests to come directly to developers, and that's not the point. As a product owner, you're recognising, I don't have time to explain why the basket icon looks like that. So to increase my team's knowledge and awareness of what we're trying to do together is very valuable.
Yeah. In fact, I've got a story around that when I again worked in insurance. And we were doing a project for claims assessors, and we found this claims assessor who could come and help the project. He was the biggest claims assessor ever. He had to duck to get into the room. He was that kind of size. But I remember one particular instance where we got him to take the whole team, the development team, all the managers, anyone who was remotely working on it, through his process that they have to do every time there was an insurance claim.
Yeah.
And he sat there and did it on a projector. And people didn't realise. They didn't realise the actual steps that ultimately our customers had to go through. And immediately the team, the room thought, oh my goodness me, if you could just fix that bit, because that bit just took 5 minutes, do that bit and do that bit. It was so powerful.
No, it's really interesting. I think that's, I actually think if I had to pick one of the most important things about agility, because a lot of people go, it's processes and methods and stuff like that. If I had to think, what's one of the most important things about agility that will make your organisation more agile and nimble, it's getting everybody a connection with the customer.
I think that's user experience is big right
now.
And as you were talking, Phil, I was thinking that's why I love to start new pieces of work with a user story map, which has a customer journey at the top, and you get somebody to explain from the point where I decide that I need to avail myself of this service or use this product to the point where I've successfully used it, and perhaps put the loops and error paths indicated somewhere as well. Because people say, so even though I'm building just this bit here, I understand how I'm helping, and maybe I can integrate a little bit better.
It's important because we know that backlogs, you can't just magic up a backlog. It's like there's a whole sort of set of activities that go into that, and I think
I want to be able to store a credit card, but why?
And I think good product owners have got that kind of ability to create the backlog, but using other artifacts that bring the story and the interactions that the customer's going to have with the underlying system to life. So whether it's cartoons or whether it's like a kind of dumb prototype or paper prototype, or whether it's a story map, like you say, I think they've got the handle on that stuff to try and really bring it to life for the team, rather than it just be some words on a library card.
Yeah, again, it's a hard job, just like the servant leader, Scrum Master will.
Yeah.
And actually, the one thing that we only just touched on was the order that we do things in. So obviously, a product owner who offers us, I need all of this, is not at all helping us prioritise by value.
No.
But that's a crucial thing as well, isn't it? So to be agile, we expect to be learning whether our product is meeting the world's needs.
Yep. And the good product owners know that they don't really know the value until the rubber hits the road and that functionality gets hit with used by the customer.
We've seen and been able to measure that the world likes this.
Yeah.
Should we double down on that, or is there something even more important that we can look at?
Yeah, absolutely, because I think there's two situations, right? You're in a situation as a product owner and you're making something that's commodity. Like I'm making a web shop, right? And actually I know I'm going to need a shopping basket. I'm going to need a checkout. I'm going to need all that sort of stuff. That kind of thing. It's basically you're looking at hygiene factors and just ticking off the functions that other people have got. You kind of know you're going to have those to have a reasonable offering. Now, when you start getting into the innovation space, it's like you don't really know what you need, and you have to basically be working with the concept of experiments and be prepared to experiment to see what things will tweak the metrics in the right direction, and that's where you get the really, really good product ownership, when you've got an understanding of that.
As long as the business is giving us space to fold that learning back into the product.
Well, that often doesn't happen, does it? So yeah.
I want to talk a bit about ownership as well. Mm-hmm. So one of the key things I see a lot of organisations struggle with is having a product owner that is empowered to make those decisions and can actually own the backlog.
Yeah. So, and actually you get a lot of criticism of scaling methods from this as well, that the product owner is basically had their legs cut off, or whatever you want to say. Basically disempowered, because there is this kind of hierarchy of product management or product ownership that is kind of basically pushing the needs down. And it's in the same light that you say, where actually is that product owner being spoon-fed a bunch of, are they just an order taker?
Yes.
Or are they an actual empowered individual who is negotiating what they're going to do and what the team's going to do to a actual outcome that the business want?
Yes. And this also can be a problem with when you give a lot of the role to BAs.
Yeah.
So the BAs will dutifully create the user stories and document things. But actually, often with a BA, they're not empowered to make that decision to say, actually, we've tried this, we've gone out and got some feedback, it's not the right thing, let's go and do something else.
Yeah, I think quite a lot of large organisations, the empowerment doesn't lie at the team level, does it at all? I would say it's a rare occasion.
It's really interesting. Is the PO strictly a team role? That ownership, that ability to say, actually, we're choosing not to do this right now, which I know will leave some of my stakeholders very unhappy, and to be able to stand behind that.
Yeah, I think that's harder than actually having the authority, And I do think that's where the key skill comes as a PO in a large organisation, not in a startup context. Is large organisations, it's managing. I think we started off with that whole kind of managing that array of stakeholders and trying to keep them as reasonably happy as possible.
Yeah.
Because all of them have got a list of things that they want to achieve, and you are, and any organisation worth its salt always has a longer list of things that it wants to achieve than it's got capacity to do. This is the age-old problem of systems development, isn't it? It's like we've got a big list. Actually, product owner is the key person who can help that organisation try and filter the stuff to the top that's going to make the most difference, and be able to get all those stakeholders in a room together and say, look, you want to do all this stuff, but we're going to have to prioritise resources. Is a finite capacity. We have to kind of pick the right things to do.
Is it fair to say they are maximising the value that the organisation will get from that expensive set of development resources?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think everybody who is associated with product throughout the organisation, from the product owner in a team to, say, you kind of have BRMs in organisations and other kind of people who are looking at portfolio level stuff, all of those resources, their responsibility is to try and get the most out of, in terms of value, try and hit the highest value things first and make the best use of a finite capacity.
So if I was to summarise the product owner role, understand the problems that we want to be solving, offer the vision to the squad, to the development team about what we can deliver, I guess sell that vision, validate that vision with their
inspire
stakeholders.
People.
Collaborate inside the team and outside of the team. And offer ownership and be able to stand behind the decisions that they make. And prioritise the value that the team delivers.
And foster a connection with the customer. So that's the product owner. I don't think we summarised the Scrum Master.
We did
that time. Did we?
Oh.
You did. He's very good at that.
We can try and summarise the Scrum Master
to show
role
how
again.
much potential I was paying.
To summarise the Scrum Master role again, I think, and I might miss things out because it's not so fresh in my head, we're offering process leadership within the squad. We are helping the squad take ownership of the problems that they can solve. The team take ownership of things that they can solve by improving their own collaboration, and to help the organisation recognise the impediments inside the organisation that are blocking the squad from achieving what the organisation would want that squad to be achieving. Setting up meetings, agendas, but making sure that those meetings and agendas are focused on improvement and retrospective style.
And we also learnt that Phil doesn't like the term Scrum Master.
I don't like the term Scrum Master.
Do you like the term Product Owner?
No. And I will answer that before we finish.
What do you want to call them instead?
So the challenge I've got is the term Product Owner works beautifully when a team manages just one product. But I've got teams I've worked with where there's a team of 6 people and they manage 5 products.
Okay.
In which case, you don't want 5 product owners.
Can't you just call them the product owner?
So you have a single. So you want a single person in that team doing the prioritising, and sometimes delighting the owners of the various different products and the different stakeholders, but sometimes having to disappoint them.
Okay.
Conversely, if you have it the other way around, where you have a product that's been worked on by 5 teams,
Yeah.
Having a single product owner to own that one product where there's 5 teams isn't enough.
That's hard, isn't it?
So at which point you're starting to look at scaling and multiple
Yeah.
product owners, even though there's one product. So I don't know what I'd call it instead. I really don't.
Agile business analyst.
Well, maybe we can flip over to our least favourite job titles in a second, but maybe it doesn't matter. But Scrum Master, alternatives, process coach.
I can have an agile team lead.
Actually, I don't really care.
I don't care either.
I've never actually
Yeah.
been lucky enough to decide what the titles are. I don't know about you. When you arrive in an organisation, you've got people there already.
Yeah, at least if you're going out to job adverts with a Scrum Master advert, you don't actually need to write many lines in the job description because people know what it is. Hey.
Yes.
So that's the one advantage of using a Scrum Master title.
Yeah, that's the one justification for the role, which is
Yeah.
it is widely understood and misunderstood, but at least you can enter into the conversation.
And we do, right? When we go out and advertise, we use standard titles.
Yeah, Scrum Master is always the shortest job advert because it's just so obvious. You don't need to say much more.
So what were you were talking about agile lead, were you?
Well, so you get this agile delivery lead role sometimes advertised, and I think
Agile delivery manager is the one that I've seen.
yeah. Now, if you look at agile threads, people don't like the term manager because there's this whole thing of like managers versus leaders, and it's just like it just annoys me because there's a certain amount of management, and I think you were saying when we had a discussion sometime that actually the great way to manage a team is to have some of those leadership concepts.
Absolutely, yes.
And so I don't like this whole agile habit of stigmatizing managers.
I think manager to me implies a set of leadership responsibilities and a set of administrative responsibilities.
Yeah.
And to recognise that you are there to ensure the success of the team of people that you're managing. If you're in an ideal world, if you're going to be a great manager and the organisation allows you to do that, that's what I would expect from a manager. But yes, I was just throwing the term in there because it is.
But of course, you don't need managers now because all teams are self-managing.
Self-organising.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Right. Fantastic.
I think that about wraps up the Scrum Master and Product Owner roles.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.